So let's look more into this personality, right? We think, or we might think of all of like maybe the positive or the negative influences that individuals use to shape their lives as the building blocks. And since a child with better building blocks is more likely to survive and thrive, it's useful to consider some of these influences more closely. So, among the most important of our building blocks are the hereditary factors, the family atmosphere, the family constellations, and the methods of parenting. So, the biological package or the set of genes that a child inherits from their parents is just this important resource that they can use to build a personality. And this is going to be the obvious traits like their eye color, their hair type, their height, their body type, and other different aspects of their appearance. But it's also going to include the aptitude for various skills like art, music, sports, math, science, language, whatever. And whether the child fully develops these aptitudes depends on their environmental factors. So, like, for example, whether the child's family can afford guitar lessons, or whether the schools that they attend have good math teachers, and how hard the child chooses to work. And the same is true of intelligence. It's likely that nature gives us each a range of intellectual functioning, and where we wind up in that range depends on how we are stimulated by our environment and how we apply ourselves. And it seems that genes also give the child their temperament. So children are, some of them are more naturally more spirited or challenging to parents than others. And some are more compliant. Some are outgoing, while others are more introverted. But the temperament that nature provides is only a starting point. The child shapes and changes their temperament as they're responding to their environment and making choices. So, like, for example, a child with a spirited temperament can grow up to be a bully and then a violent criminal. Or they can learn to channel that spirited nature positively and become a successful leader. Which direction the child goes depends on a combination of outside influences, such as parenting and their own choices. And some children are just born with special needs that become building blocks in their own right. And these can create both challenges and opportunities for the child, and also for the entire family. How the family and the school and the community are responding to these needs is going to influence how the child uses the needs as building blocks. Do they get the help that they need to thrive in spite of the limitations? Does the child learn how to build on their strengths? Or does the child gain more by using their needs to put others in their service? Does the child thrive or strive to thrive, or are they just happy to survive? So for a young child, the family is their entire world. Almost all of the child's early influences come from the family. So the atmosphere of the family home is therefore very important. What does it feel like to live in the home? Is there a feeling of mutual respect and cooperation? Are the parents warm and caring? Is there good humor? Is there time for fun? Are the girls and the boys treated with equal love and respect? Whatever atmosphere prevails, the child is going to respond to it, and that response becomes a building block of their personality. The children's responses can take many forms, like optimism, pessimism, rebelliousness, obedience, shyness, confidence, and pretty much anything in between. The possibilities there are endless. Another influence on the child is the number of other children in their family and the order of birth. No two children come into a family of two adults, or sometimes only one. The second child enters the family of adults and a sibling. The child's position in the family influences the role that they're going to play in that family and also in the world in general. And research has shown that as a group, first children are likely to have certain characteristics in common, as our youngest children and middle children, etc. So the chart that I'm going to show you shows some of these common characteristics and some ways that we as parents can avoid magnifying their negative aspects. So in using this chart, just keep in mind that, when more than a 5-year gap exists between any two children, the effect is it were almost two separate, complete families. So, like, for example, Lisa, 16, is treated as if she's an only child. Jason, 9, is treated like a first child. And Susan, 7, is treated like a second child. Just because they're so far apart. The first two children were so far apart. So, the first child is more likely to take responsibility for other siblings, get along well with authority figures, become a high achiever, and be a perfectionist and feel superior to others. So as parents, we can avoid pressuring him to succeed, emphasize the value of participating, not just winning, teach that mistakes are for learning, and you're not an utter failure if you didn't make a mistake, and show how to accept mistakes with a smile, not a kick. If you're an only child, or if you have an only child, the child is going to want to be the center of attention, be very unsure of herself, feel less competent than others, like the parents, be responsible, and refuse to cooperate unless they're getting their way. So we can, as parents, we can provide learning opportunities with other children, encourage visiting friends, have overnight company, and use childcare and nursery schools so that they have that socialization with other children. If it's a second child, they're going to try to catch up with the siblings, their other siblings' abilities. They're going to try to be the siblings' opposite. They're going to rebel in order to find their own place. And so we can encourage their uniqueness and avoid comparing them with their siblings and allow that child to handle the sibling themselves or in family meetings. And if it's a middle child, they're going to feel left out and unsure of their position in the family. They're going to be sensitive or bitter or vengeful. They're going to be a good diplomat or mediator and be spoiled by their parents and siblings. So we have to, as parents, make time for one-on-one activities with these children, include them in activities and discussions, and honestly ask for their opinions. And then the youngest child is treated like a baby. They're going to be very self-indulgent, highly creative, and very clever. And our job as parents is to not rescue them from every conflict. Don't refer to them as the baby. Encourage self-reliance and not regularly do for them what they can do for themselves. So the family constellation is really this important building block for the children, but we have to understand that it's not so much the child's position in the family as it is their view of the position that makes the difference in the way that they're developing. So you and your children may or may not fit these typical characteristics depending on the decisions that you've made. We do have several methods of parenting. And so the building block over which parents have the most control is the style of their parenting. So let's go back over these three styles that we talked about in lesson 1. And we have the autocratic style, which is the dictator. And the dictator parent is an all-powerful figure who uses reward and punishment as tools for keeping everybody in line. So the children are told what, how, where, when, and why to do most things. And there's very little room for them to question or challenge or learn to make their own decisions. We have also the permissive style, which is the doormat. And the doormat parent allows the children too much freedom. There are very few limits placed on their children and very little respect for order and routine. And many permissive parents behave as doormats and they just let their children walk all over them. And in this system, the children are experiencing insecurity because there's no feeling of cooperation or belonging, and the children are left wondering who's in charge here. And then we have the authoritative style, which is the active parent. And active parenting is, in some respects, a balance between the autocratic and the permissive methods, but it really is much more than that. In an active parenting household, the parents and the children both have rights and responsibilities. The parent's the leader and encourages the cooperation and stimulates the learning. And there's order and routine and freedom within limits. And everybody in the family is a very important member. But when it comes to parenting our children, we want to give them the best building blocks that we can. And that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to survive and thrive in the kind of society in which we live, but it will greatly improve their chances.